So it's unfortunate how when we come up in the game, it does something to our moral compass. Like when you can do things like sell drugs with your father or to your father, or sell drugs to your aunt or your uncle, or sit in a room watching grown people who you respected getting high and what we call geeking up and, just being extremely high off the product. It does something it desensitizes you, right? And it desensitizes your morals. And when you grow up with pain and you grow up in poverty and you've made an excuse to yourself that any immoral or illegal activity is okay because of how you grew up and what your circumstance was, everything then is on the table. Everything becomes accessible and acceptable. And you can't live like that. You can't live life like that. You gotta live life with boundaries. Even if they're self-imposed boundaries, there gotta be some kind of discipline. There gotta be boundaries to life. And so I remember breaking one of my, biggest at the time moral boundaries was I had my beeper working, right? So now I'm working on the block. And I got a little bit of product for myself. And I'm still wholesaling and working my way to find my connect. But I ran into a white guy that was, buying a lot of product. I thought he was a cop. But my OG had gave me the rules that if you make somebody sniff in front of you, then they're not a police, right? So I made him sniff in front of me and he bought some work, and now he's buying like $300 from me here and there, and he's spending some good money. And I was just so, again, addicted to the money that I lost all my moral compass, lost my moral boundaries. Remember $1 million trillion. Remember the passion. Remember the outwork the work. So you start to become so crazy that you have no guidelines now. So I remember growing up, I grew up in church. I actually was an usher in my church. I sang in the choir. I was a youth ministry president. Like, I grew up all the time in church, right? I went to Baptist conventions with my grandmother, and I was projected to be one of the new young pastors to ever come up, right? I guess people saw this leadership quality in me early. But anyway, I remember getting getting a beep from White Boy Joe, I called him. And so from White Boy Joe, he paged me and he wanted something. But now I was at church though. But I remember leaving upstairs in the sanctuary at church, going downstairs in the basement to the kids' nursery and using the church phone to call Joe back, where I set up our meeting location, and I went and seen Joe after church and made our transaction. And during that time, I just realized where it brought me to a different level of commitment to the illegal activity, to the drug trade. At that time, I became all in. Even knowing how wrong I was, even knowing that, to be hustling or even creating or condoning a drug transaction coming out of my church space, there was no discipline there. It was a love not just for the money, but it was a love for the hustle. And so it's those kind of loose morals and loose behaviors which is always the downfall of every hustler. And so that church experience always stuck with me, because as I went through 10 years of the drug game, I then committed myself to it, and nothing else at that point mattered. And I would break more laws and more moral grounds. And I think that's one of the big parts of why I love who I become today, is because I've reversed all of that. And I really stand on my integrity, and I stand on my moral compass. I stand on doing what's right because it's right, and I stand on honoring God. But this is just, again, part of my life story. This is a part of my real life. And for me, and I want to say this in a way of relating it to business, it's very important that we do make the tough sacrifices to outwork the work and support our businesses. We just got to always make sure that we don't let our ambition, our commitment to outwork the work, we don't let it cross moral guidelines and moral boundaries. Whether it's illegal or legal, moral is a whole different subject. If you know in your spirit, your heart is not right, it's not for you to do. The money, the results, success will come later, but let's do it the right way. So in this, I want to say, church, let's outwork the work, but let's do it in a way that's pleasing to God and that gives us peace for mind and peace for our soul. Outwork the work.